Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's Scality webinar. Our webinar today is titled Never Pay Ransom, Never Lose Data, Be Veeam Ready with Scality. We have the privilege today of having two experts with us, well-versed in this area as presenters. We have Candida Valois, who's our field CTO of the Americas, and Rob Orton, Senior Sales Engineer in the UK. We really do love and encourage the questions, and want to make this interactive and informative for everybody here. So please have your questions ready. We'll answer those at the end of the webinar. And at this time, I'll turn it over to you, Candida.
Thank you, Carl. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining this webinar today. So we are going to go over a few things. This is the agenda. We're going to give you a quick market overview of where we are in terms of data, in the role of object storage with one of the best breed integration with a backup application well-known called Veeam. We also gonna go over into the details of that integration, and by the end, we are going to provide a live demo. So please, any questions, we're going to answer all the questions after that demo. So what do we know? We know that every industry will deal with is now very digital. We're talking about financial institutions, healthcare, resource governments, and others. You cannot find an exception to that rule. The data is so valuable now that people are paying millions of dollars to protect it. And not only that, some of them need to keep the data online for a longer period of time. So they're looking for a solution to store it, to keep the integrity of the data, and to protect it against all different threats. We're talking about unplanned events, we're talking about system errors, we're talking about malware, and definitely the big one, ransomware. If you look at this slide, one of the most interesting stats in here is that 95% of businesses are saying they need to manage unstructured data is a problem for their business. But think about this just for a second. 80% of their data is unstructured, though that creates a lot of big challenges for a lot of these customers, a lot of this industry, because as I say before, they have to protect it. And some of them right now have to keep it for a longer period of time. So what do we know as well? We know that the malware ransom threats are on the rise. We all hear the metrics are increasing. The attacks are increasing. Look at this number. The average bill now is almost $2 million for recovering from ransomware. And that's not only the payment. You also have to think about the time and the people. Another really interesting stats here is like 13% of organizations do not pay the ransom. So what does that mean? Everyone is paying. And not only that, when you have a ransomware attack, one of the things that happen is you get 23% of downtime. And that is a big cost to your business. That is you losing money. And not only losing money, but your brand is suffering from any sort of ransomware attack. So the reality now is it's a matter of when, not if. And we need to be ready for it. So how do we do this? I know how do we protect data for the ultimate threat that is ransomware? I'm pretty sure you have heard the term of data immutability. Many people know it, but just to be very clear, we mean that data stored in the system will not be modified if you do not desire to do that. So the way you store it in its original form is the way we guarantee it and will always be protected. The system will not allow it to be deleted by any malicious actors of any sort. And likewise, you will not be allowed to modify it, not to do any updates to the data. So we provide here at Scality, we provide data immutability, but not only that, we also provide data retention policy. So for example, you can say you can keep the data immutable for a specific period of time. And then we also have some other advanced features as well. Think about it like compliance as an example. If you're a financial institution and you're looking for SEC compliance, if you're a healthcare provider and you're looking for HIPAA compliance, we also support that compliance mode and governance. So it gives you more protection within that retention period that you need. So here at Scality, we believe that we have an unbreakable cloud storage solution that will keep that data safe from ransomware or any other attack. How do we do that? So typically, a modern data protection environment looks like this. You have an application running on some hypervisor environment like a VMware or Hyper-V. There will be some local storage, and then you will deploy a backup server. I'm using as an example in here Veeam. That is a very popular backup application. It supports data immutability, which means that it can use the Artesca, the Scality Artesca solution, or the Scality Ring solution as the capacity tier with that data immutability option. We do that utilizing the S3 Object Lock API. So how does that look like? As soon your bucket is locked in that fashion, you get all those properties that we talked about before. Data can be deleted. It cannot be modified for the retention period. And that also includes the administrator. So that gives you this perfectly into this model of a 3-2-1, where you have 3 copies of your data, 2 different medias, and usually you will have an offsite copy somewhere. That offsite copy could be an immutable tier, and that could be a Scality Ring or the Scality Artesca solution. It will drill into a little more of that. Artesca provides you that ultra resiliency. You can restore your data from any unplanned event, including DC failure, data center failures to ransom attacks. We secure your Veeam immutable backups in Artesca. You can restore your data even in case of data failures. And not only that, you can extend it even more into a 3-2-1-1 rule. So in the previous slide, we talked about 3-2-1. So let's talk about 3-2-1-1. What that means, we do have customers that are also looking for a cloud outside to use those cloud providers. So again, you have 3 copies of your data. You store your copies in 2 different medias. You keep 1 copy of your data offsite. You keep 1 backup copy offline or immutable. So now it provides you an additional protection for any sort of event. Artesca, it is a simple to operate. You can start with a single server. You can keep your Veeam backups jobs the way you wanted to keep it. Artesca do the capacity tier expanding to the performance tier. The data movement between the performance tier and capacity tier, you're not going to even notice it because it's not noticeable. Everything happens in the back end, and most importantly, no need to configure additional copy jobs. That is super important. It is an end-to-end software solution, easy to install, easy to manage, easy to upgrade. You can utilize HTTPS web to manage Veeam and to manage Artesca. It's also Artesca is API driven. So if you guys are into APIs and you want to use our system management RESTful API, you can do that, and you're going to get a complete end-to-end support. And lastly, not only Artesca helps you with your handful of VMs, because you can start minimum 50 terabytes, but when you guys are ready to expand to thousands of workloads, you can do that. You can start with 50 terabytes usable and expand to the 100 terabytes or more, all the way to the petabytes when you guys are ready to do so. And how this looks like, so this is a typical physical architecture of a Veeam Artesca deployment. You're going to have your Veeam utilizing installing your servers or servers, depending on your environment. You're going to have your performance tier in there. You're going to have the Artesca solution running on a 1U server. For example, I'm giving an example here as an HPE, but it's a software solution, runs on any x86 Linux standard server. And we integrate with Veeam utilizing the S3 API, what we call the S3 access protocol, those S3 connector, and we add immutability utilizing the S3 Object Lock API. So as soon you enable immutability, utilizing Veeam, those objects, those backups are going to be completely mutable. When they get into their Artesca bucket, you won't be able to modify, you won't be able to change it until retention is met. And as I mentioned before, it has other compliance features. But most importantly, you can not only do Artesca, use Artesca for your Veeam backups. It's a completely multi-tenant model that if you have homegrown application that is very application owner driven, you can use Artesca for those S3 applications. If you have applications at the edge, censoring, and other type of applications at the edge, you can use Artesca to store that data. And lastly, it's great for the architects and the developers. It's cloud native. We utilize Kubernetes as the architecture, as the platform. So easy to install, easy to manage, easy to operate. Now let's show it to you guys. I have Rob that is going to show you the demo of it.
Hey, Candida, thanks for that. So just before we jump into the demo, I just wanted to mention that we've got a bunch of collateral for you to download. So it's easy for you to download just by using the paperclip just to the right-hand side of the screen. You can see some details around ransomware and how Artesca works with Veeam to secure those immutable backups. But for now, I'm going to drop into a pre-recorded demo. And then afterwards, I'm happy to take questions. And I've got a live Artesca.
Hello and welcome. This video will demonstrate how easy it is to connect Veeam with Artesca in order to create immutable copies of your Veeam backups. First, in the Artesca UI, we will create an account to use with Veeam. This account will allow us to create security credentials to connect Veeam to Artesca. With Artesca, we can, of course, create multiple accounts to connect different applications. Next, we will use the data browser built into Artesca to create a bucket for Veeam to use. We will also enable Object Lock on this bucket to ensure that all Veeam backups are immutable. Next, we will go to the Veeam server to configure a backup repository. First, we create a backup performance tier on the local Veeam server. Then we create a folder to store the local backups. Next, we create the object storage repository using Artesca as the object storage location. Choose S3 compatible storage, give it a name, and then we're going to enter the Artesca details. All we have to do is provide the S3 endpoint from Artesca and then a set of valid credentials. To generate valid credentials, we return to the Artesca interface in the Accounts tab, selecting the Artesca Veeam account we created earlier on. We hit Create Access Key, we copy this, paste it back into the Veeam UI, then we copy the secret access key from Artesca and paste that into Veeam. Within the Artesca bucket we previously created, we tell Veeam to create a dedicated folder for it to store the scale-out backup repository in. Then we select to make recent backups immutable, and we set the time period we want the backups to remain immutable for, in this case 10 days. Then we have finished configuration of the object storage repository in Veeam. Now we create a scale-out backup repository to leverage both the performance and the capacity tiers. Once we have given it a name, we select the local performance tier we created earlier on, then the capacity tier on Artesca. Then we select Copy Backup to Object Storage as soon as they are created. This gives us the ability to recover from the object storage in the event that the local storage is completely lost. Now that we have completed configuration of the scale-out backup repository, let's go ahead and create a backup job. We'll give the backup job a name and we'll select the computer to backup. For ease, we will select File Level Backup of the operating system files. And then we choose the scale-out backup repository we created previously. And finally, we create a schedule for the backup to run. Everything is now configured and ready. Click Start to run the job manually. Veeam will back up the files we defined earlier and then copy the backup to Artesca Object Storage, ensuring it is kept immutable for the time period we set up. We can check the component objects of the backup have been stored on Artesca by using the data browser. We can identify each object is immutable by the padlock icon on the left of the object name. The summary information will also display the object lock mode, compliance or governance, and the period of time remaining that the object will be immutable for. Now we can demonstrate how to recover the backup data directly from the object store in the event the Veeam server is compromised and has to be rebuilt. First, we have to recreate the backup repository. So select Add Backup Repository. We then add Object Storage, select S3 compatible, then we give it a name, and then we enter the details of where the object repository is located. So the endpoint and the credentials, the secret key and access key. Here the credentials are already saved from an earlier entry. Then we browse the location for the bucket containing the repository, and we select the folder in the bucket. Then, importantly, we select the Make Recent Backups Immutable checkbox and enter the immutable period, and then we apply the changes. Next, we select the repository we just created, and first we rescan. Then we right-click and import the backup. Then we hit Next, and then Finish, and Veeam will go ahead and import those existing backups. Under Backups, we can see Object Storage imported, and we can click down through to the backup job. Then we can restore the guest files, and then the Microsoft Windows backup. And this shows that in the event we had to rebuild the Veeam server, we can import existing backups direct from Artesca and restore from them. So today we have shown you how easy it is to create immutable copies of your backups using Veeam and Artesca. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the pre-recorded demo. I think it's time to open up for questions now. So if you've got any questions, please feel free to type them into the question and answer box, and Candida and I will do our best to endeavor to answer those for you.
All right, Rob, it looks like we had one that's just come through. What platform is needed for Artesca?
So that's a great question. So Artesca is software-defined storage. It runs on any industry standard x86 AMD server. Obviously, we have to size it correctly for the capacity and for the workload that we're looking at. But basically, any industry standard server, we've got a list of ones that we've pre-tested. And as part of that list, we've defined performance and specific things like SSD or NVMe drives as well. But also, importantly, with Artesca 1.5, which is due at the end of this month, we're releasing the ability to run Artesca on an ESXi environment. So you can start with as little as one node or 50 terabytes, and you can grow that within an ESXi environment. And that, of course, is going to help with some of the hardware supply chain issues that we're seeing at the moment. And it also helps customers that want to test. Maybe they want to do a POC or something like that, so they can have Artesca running in production on VMware as well. It just gives ultimate flexibility.
And again, just a reminder to the attendees, the chat box in the lower right-hand corner, feel free to drop your questions in there. One other just to come through. What is the minimum size footprint of Artesca?
Okay, so one of the industry uniques of Artesca is the fact that it runs on a single node. So Artesca can run on a single node, and it can run on up to 6 nodes as well. If it's in a multi-node environment, we of course have a node loss protection. So the system will be able to deal with a loss of a node and carry on running. But one single node is the minimum, 3 or 6. And in addition, the minimum licensable point is 50 terabytes. Below that, it's free to use. Above that, it's chargeable. So one single node with 12 disks.
Okay, great.
Let's
see. How do you compare Artesca with Ring for backups?
So Artesca and Ring are obviously similar. So they're both object storage, and they're both driven to have this S3 API compatibility, which allows us to deliver immutability, especially for things like Veeam. So Artesca and Ring has a lot of overlap. Where Artesca is important is addressing the mid-market more. So with this lower entry point, we really see uptake from customers that really want that lower entry point. And of course, Artesca starts low, but it also scales big as well. So we don't just service the 50 or the 100 terabyte market with Artesca. We can service into the multiple petabyte region. And of course, Ring has a slightly different starting point. Ring has a 3-node, 200 terabyte starting point, and we've got customers running again multiple tens of petabytes in the Ring environment. So I think of it as the functionality is very similar. It's our code. It's our version of the S3, which we fully support lots of those API calls. It's just more about the entry point and the way in which the customers
let's see, next question. Let me see if I read this right. Veeam alone doesn't make immutability? So that was a question.
Okay, so think of it as a security guard and a safe sort of scenario. So Veeam is a security guard. Veeam gives us an object, and Veeam tells us that it wants that object to be locked for the amount of time that you define in the drop-down box that we saw earlier on. So Veeam gives us the cargo, the diamonds, if you like, and it tells us to keep them secure for 10 days. What Scality does is it takes hold of that object and it locks it in. So it's a combination of Veeam working with the Object Lock API, which is part of the standard S3 API that we fully support, and we honor that. So we keep that locked away. We make sure that no one can delete it, either accidentally or on purpose. And depending on the mode, whether it's governance or compliance, we can make sure that even system administrators can't do that. So Veeam and anyone using Veeam can have that surety of immutability, just making sure that that backup chain is protected for the amount of time that it was predefined.
Let's see, one other just came through. Is there a certified hardware list for Artesca?
So this comes into what I was saying earlier on. So we're software defined. We run on many different platforms. We have tested against certain popular platforms. So HPE, obviously, Lenovo, Supermicro, Dell, and we've got that information available. It's certainly in the configurations. We've got recommended hard disk, recommended SSD, NVMe networks, everything. So if you reach out to your to your local sales channel, we can help check that. We've got a list that's full of the tested and certified models. Just out of interest, if you've got after this webinar, if you've got any queries about Scality or any questions about how to go about ordering or sizing correctly, just reach out to artesca@scality.com, and we can make sure that the local sales team can get back in touch with you and help you with that.
Let's see, what's the difference between this and other S3 object storages, and why should I prefer Artesca?
So I think one of the strong selling points that we've seen with Artesca at the moment is this super small entry point. So the ability to start with one node, a minimum of 12 drives in that one node, and the VM, and scale appropriately. So we fully support the S3 API. We've been in the S3 market with an S3 connector for many years now. So we've got a lot of functionality that's built into that. So we're fully compliant with the S3 API calls. The clues in the name, Scality, so we can start small, we can scale large, we can be flexible with the approach. So some of our competitors might have appliances that are fixed in certain upgrade routes. If you're with Scality, with the Artesca or the Ring platform, we enable, it's the customer's data, we enable the systems to grow around that data, whether it's predicted or
also
unpredicted.
Something else to add to that is the way we charge for licensing. The way we charge for licensing is very different than any other vendors. And as Rob mentioned, the architecture itself, the way we protect data within the server, the way we protect data across the servers, the way you can scale, the compatibility with S3, the things that we're doing with immutability, and so on. And lastly, the performance that the system provides as an object storage solution.
Thank you. Okay, another question just came in. We're a solutions provider in Chile. How do you support in my country? Do we need certifications?
So I'm your person for Latin America. In Chile, we do have customers in Chile. We have a big service provider in Chile that is using our solution to provide you more information. Do we have certifications? We definitely have some sort of certifications that we can go over. So please get in touch with me, Candida@scality.com. Or Artesca@scality.com, and we can provide you with the info.
One thing we haven't really mentioned in this webinar in detail yet is Veeam 12. So with Veeam 12, there's a fundamental shift in the fact that they will enable object storage to be the primary tier. So what that means for Veeam users is the simplification of the stack, right? So they could have one completely immutable system built on Artesca or Ring that has that entire stack from the tier 1 all the way through to the archive tier, and all of it being fully immutable and having the ability to reinstate in the event that something's happened to the Veeam repository. So there's some exciting things coming with Veeam 12. Obviously, that's coming later on in this year, and we'll be watching out. We'll be watching our eyes closely on Veeam for that one as well.
Okay, it looks like there are no more questions. So we'd like to thank everybody for their time today. Again, please reach out to us if you have any questions. And again, thank you for your time and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.